Peppers, and this is a very exciting Pep because we are joined by Hand of God, show 'em your face, kind of with a mask.
Yeah, you're not allowed to see his real face. It's like dentists appearing on ads.
Exactly.
But anyway, he's real and he is back.
And his nose and mouth are horribly disfigured.
Yeah. And the often shocking technical incompetence that has been the hallmark of the last few weeks. For those of you who enjoyed that, I'm afraid that's gone now because we've got the Hand of God back.
They will not recognise this podcast today, I'm afraid. Bob Woodward, we talked about at length on the TV show. It's your turn, Dr. Dave.
Well, I'm going to throw it right back to you because the reason I mentioned the Chaser 9/11 thing is I want to ask you about media ethics.
Okay.
Because you have been involved in some very big questions on media ethics. Now, by way of introduction to this, I'm sure that everybody knows at this point that Bob Woodward has a new book coming out called Rage. Donald Trump sat for 18 interviews for this book, average of half an hour each. There were times when he actually called up Bob Woodward.
Late at night.
Yes. To tell him stuff. Now, before I get to the big ethical question here, I just want to make a few observations.
Yes.
One is this really showcases Trump's obsession with media elites.
Yes.
And the whole narrative, it's Trump versus the media elite. No, they've got an utterly symbiotic relationship with each other.
This is why he loves Maggie Haberman.
Yeah. I mean, and
from New York Times.
Yeah. He's totally into this stuff. And also, I mean, this has been a golden era for the New York Times and the Washington Post in terms of subscriptions and things like that. Second is it's being reported now that apparently he thought he was the president who could get the better of Bob Woodward. Right. So for those of you who aren't familiar with his post-Watergate trajectory, he's essentially become the guy who writes at least one, sometimes two, massive volumes about each president, which is 600 pages long and just, I mean, it's not sort of Michael Wolff style gossip, but it's filled with inside information.
Yeah.
I remember, I think I must have been about 14, buying his book about Clinton from a book sale somewhere. And I remember being really excited because it's like, oh, this has got the word fuck in it. I mean, because it was about Bill Clinton, so
course, yeah.
it was there a lot.
Yeah.
But no one ever looks good in one of these books. Like, no one ever reads a Bob Woodward book and thinks, well, my opinion of that particular president has improved.
Yeah,
right?
That's true.
That's not his shtick. But apparently Trump thought he was going to charm Bob Woodward. Obviously didn't. And okay, so the big revelation, which we have all been told, is that, first of all, Xi Jinping told Trump that COVID was going to be deadly, was going to spread very quickly, and crucially was going to be airborne.
Yes.
Now, I was looking back through news reports, and this is February 7th. He has this conversation with Bob Woodward where he reveals that. That was just not a widely accepted fact at the time.
Yeah, no, that was new.
The WHO was beginning to say we think it could be airborne. But if you look, at news reports from April, you'll still find it being discussed as a controversy. Is it airborne or is it not? And certainly in those first 2 months, the orthodoxy in the US was it's the spread on surfaces that's really important. And that's why we don't want to encourage people to wear masks because we need those masks for frontline medical workers. So we have this remarkable thing. Trump believes Xi Jinping. Trump was ahead of the science.
Yes.
At the time.
He was. He was all that.
I never thought I would say that. Trump was ahead of the science. And it is staggering to think how many lives could have been saved if Trump had said to his supporters, wear a MAGA mask.
Oh, look, there's no doubt.
If Trump had made that a fashion accessory in February, it could have been a very different pandemic.
Yeah, there is no doubt that if he'd been pro-mask early, that would have made a big difference.
Yes.
But what I would say is, while I agree that there was still arguments going on through to April, by the end of February, early March, at that point in time, I think most people thought it was airborne. Like certainly, I remember when New York shut down, which was the second week of March.
Right.
I remember reading an article at that point in time about Taiwan and them all wearing masks, and the article was saying, why isn't New York all wearing masks? Like at that point in time, it was, and it wasn't like, oh, this is a shocking.
I don't think that was the majority position. Anyway,
I'm not saying it wasn't the majority, but I'm saying the idea of it being airborne was definitely out there by the beginning of March.
Right.
Like if not proven.
It was out. And the WHO started saying on February 10th. So this is 3 days after.
Yeah.
So the idea was out there, but no one was inclined to believe the
Absolutely.
WHO. Okay.
So in terms of saving, the reason I'm bringing it up is not because I'm being pedantic. It's because in terms of saving lives, we saw exactly what happened when it got out there that it was airborne, which is nothing.
Right.
So I draw a distinction between Trump going pro-mask and Trump telling people it's airborne.
Okay.
Yeah,
good, fair distinction. But okay, but this leads us to the ethical question about our friend Woody.
Yes, should Woody have held on to
so ethics it's never a clear-cut area. Every profession has got its own ethics. So I'm very familiar with academic ethics. I don't feel particularly comfortable weighing in on a media ethics debate. But you are a media creature.
I am.
So
I'm a creature.
Yes. And as I say, you've been involved in some very big ethical questions.
Yes.
So from your standpoint, was this an ethical transgression, or, was Woodward following a protocol that he was right to follow?
Well, first of all, let me tell you what Bob Woodward says, because he's already been asked about this.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing he said was that he didn't know what Trump's source was when Trump said this. And that is an important point. That when Trump
didn't Trump tell him that she told him this?
Well, he's saying that he wasn't 100% sure of
that she had actually told him.
Yeah, well,
yeah, fair enough. Yeah,
I mean,
okay.
He did that
that is a fair enough
He did
point.
make precisely that point with Trump. Quote: "The biggest problem I have, which is always a problem with Trump, is I don't know if it's true." That's a quote from Bob
fair
Woodward.
Enough. Yes.
So, but he said then that by I think it was April, he said he then had a good idea of the context, the source, everything. And he said then, quote, "My job is to understand it, to hold him accountable and hold myself accountable. I did the best I could towards those ends." And he said that my job is to form the best obtainable version of the truth, not to rush individual revelations into publication. That's what he's saying. Right? Okay. So now my point of view is that I like I just said, I don't necessarily think it would have made a huge difference to get the airborne thing out early.
Right.
I completely wish Trump had embraced masks early on, and in fact, his Surgeon General had embraced masks as well.
Yeah.
but I mean, like, it's one of those things where we often criticize Trump for not following the science and the scientists, and this is a case where unless we get more information that we don't know of, he was following the scientists who are saying don't push masks.
Yes.
Like there's no scuttlebutt out there that Donald Trump is leaning on the Surgeon General to be against masks.
No, that was the orthodoxy.
Yeah. So we should cut him some slack in that regard. I feel Donald Trump. Now, in terms of Bob Woodward, I don't think it would have made any difference. I really don't. Okay. I think it would have been a huge story by all means, but it's one of those things where when you're ahead of your time, it doesn't matter. Like if when there's one death or if February 7th is pre-death.
Yeah.
When it's pre-death and you're the Cassandra going, watch out, it's deadly. People going, no, it's not. Fuck off. Yeah, like it's like Bob Woodward saying Trump saying this to me behind your back. People are saying, oh, that's Trump going crazy, trying to act like he's Z's good friend and just gossiping.
Yeah, but given how partisan all of this was, okay, so leaving the airborne issue aside, if by doing that, Woodward had actually put pressure on Trump, I've got a recording of him actually talking about how serious this is. If he put pressure on Trump to actually come out and say this is really serious, that could have prevented that partisan split, which you can still see in the country on the basic issue of is this actually a serious thing or not? Potentially,
yeah. I feel a little bit loath to criticize, well, to not just criticize, to sort of hoe into Bob Woodward for not having a higher standard than pretty much everyone else. Like Bob Woodward, what we're asking him to do here is to cost himself, I don't know how many millions of dollars, because that would have fucked his book up completely, right? Because this was right at the beginning of the time when he's taking.
Yeah, I don't think he's exactly short of cash.
No, I know. But I mean, I'm not feeling sorry for the guy. But I'm just saying that the standard we are asking from Bob Woodward for him to destroy his book, on the off chance it might make a difference to America, I feel is a higher standard than we're asking pretty much everyone else involved in the administration at the moment, and a lot of the people in the media, and in that we're not asking other people to forgo millions of dollars in order for the off chance they might make some kind of a difference. We're asking people to, well-paid people to resign when they have plenty of other jobs lined up, to when there's a massive issue of law and order at stake or something like that. I feel like, and they don't. I feel like what we're asking Bob Woodward there is probably more than I would expect him to honour myself. I mean, what do you think? Would you expect him to do that?
Bob Woodward, you could argue, is the most senior figure in American journalism.
Yeah, I think you could.
Why aren't we holding him to a higher standard than everyone else?
Well, I think as I said, I think it's a big ask. But whatever. Look, if you could definitely demonstrate it would have saved lives.
Yeah.
Then I think yes.
Right.
But I don't think Bob Woodward's earning a couple of $1 million is worth however many thousands of lives, even to Bob Woodward. But I think it's just so grey, and it's just so. It's so hard to demonstrate it necessarily would have made a difference. How many times in the Trump administration have we said, "Oh wow, this is going to make such a huge difference, this story," and then the next day we've moved on.
We're talking about his political fortunes.
I know, but
this
not just
is
that.
the trajectory of a pandemic.
Yeah, but how many stories have broken about the pandemic? How many bits of research have come out about the pandemic? They've just been ignored.
Yeah, but once again, Trump is in a very powerful position in terms of people follow the signals that he sends.
You're asking Trump. You're arguing that Trump would, for the first time in his career, be incredibly consistent and would respect logic and would respect shame and would not come up with some bullshit and then just move on, because that's what he does.
If Woodward thing is, by that point, by February 7th, Trump hadn't actually. Trump would have had room to say, "Yeah, actually, this is very serious." That was only a week after he'd implemented the Chinese travel ban.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
He could have actually, at that point, presented this as here's a continuation of the toughness
and killed the economy.
It was like it was a month later. No, he wouldn't have needed to kill the economy. I'm just, something like wearing fucking masks.
Yeah.
It was a month later that he was saying stuff like, it's just going to disappear.
Remember what China was doing at this point in time. China was locking people in houses and blowtorching their doors shut.
The US never would have done that.
No, I know. But I'm saying if Trump
quarantining returning travelers, perhaps.
If Trump goes Mr. Tough, and that's what China's doing, and all they're doing is wearing a mask, people are going to go, why aren't we going further than this? If this is so serious, I feel like, let's put it this way.
Yeah.
You're saying, how could Trump deny what is on tape? I'm saying Access Hollywood tape comes out. 2 weeks later, he's saying it's not real. That is history. That's how Trump deals with tapes.
Yeah, but even his supporters knew that it was real at that point. I mean, Also, the other thing is other Republican elites might have actually taken action.
Maybe.
Yeah.
These Republican elites. Have you been watching the Republican elites?
Okay.
That's okay. This was a good discussion, but we should move on. Do you have anything else to say about Bob Woodward before we move on?
No. I imagine everybody is fairly well versed on what he has revealed by this point.
I just want to say one thing about this whole Bob Woodward thing, and that is we should not forget who is actually at fault here, and is not Bob Woodward. And is not Donald Trump. There's only one person.
Joe Biden?
No.
It was Lindsey Graham who helped convince Donald Trump to talk to Bob Woodward. Lindsey Graham brokered that meeting. Lindsey Graham even sat in on the first interview between Bob Woodward and the president. How'd that turn out? Now, remember, Lindsey Graham is supposed to be a Republican, so why would he do something like that? You'd have to ask him. But keep in mind that Lindsey Graham has opposed, passionately opposed, virtually every major policy initiative that Donald Trump articulated when he first ran, from ending illegal immigration to pulling back from pointless wars to maintaining law and order at home. Lindsey Graham was against all of that more than many Democrats. So maybe you already know the answer.
Sabotage.
There's Lindsey Graham. He's one. Lindsey Graham. I tell you what, I never realized how effective Lindsey Graham was until this moment. I never realized that he would get into Donald Trump's bedroom at night, pick up his phone at midnight or whatever, call up Bob Woodward, and then shove the phone into Donald Trump's
By the
ear.
way, okay. So Donald Trump knew how bad COVID was going to be.
He knew it for 5 seconds before he forgot.
How many of his adult children do you think he told about it?
Oh,
I only think, okay, I think there's 3 possibilities.
yes.
None of them, which is the most likely.
Yes.
Only Ivanka
Yep.
or Ivanka and Donald Jr.
Poor old Eric. Look, I think your logic is sound. I have to say, sadly, I have to say that. I honestly think, and I know you probably don't believe it, I honestly reckon Donald Trump would have forgotten he had that conversation an hour after he had it.
Look, it's entirely possible.
Like, I honestly,
I will not put that past him.
Anyway, I'll tell you what, actually, there's one angle on this, actually, that I would like to talk about, just briefly. Because we touched on it last week, which was the people who are loving this. We referred to Rachel Maddow because this has been Maddow week. Like she's been loving this. We referred to her last week, and I was just thinking to myself, I actually wanted to bring her up on this podcast because I feel like, as someone who makes an American political show, I do have some.
She's a competitor.
No, I want to take that. I got to take her down. Yeah. No, I do actually feel like I have insight into one question, which you asked last podcast, and I think it's a good question.
Yes.
Which is, why is she like that? and that is because Rachel Maddow is a very intelligent person.
Yeah,
like
highly educated as well.
Absolutely. I remember, but I've been to blogs for 20 years. I remember back in early blogs. That's the reason I'm like I am. Early blogs, Rachel Maddow was one of the best bloggers there was. She was very, she did some brilliant stuff. She really did. I used to read it all the time. She was fantastic. She was nothing like she is now, right? And the question you have to ask is, which you did, why? And I just want to make 2 points which most people watching this would not know, would not realize unless you make a TV show. Right. And so I just want to lend some personal experience. Okay. So, number one, you've got no time.
Yes.
Now, I'm talking about even a weekly show, okay? Mm-hmm. For a bi-weekly show, I make the show twice a week, right? Imagine, the time, just to write graphic requests takes 5 hours per show. Okay. Yeah. Just writing graphics requests for the graphics people. Okay. To get your makeup, to walk around. Like it's 2 hours just messing around before you go on set. Just doing basic TV stuff, not preparing anything.
If you want an idea of the preparation, it's like that scene at the beginning of Mad Max Fury Road when all the war boys are getting ready to go on this big mission. We're going to get graphics from the graphics farm and makeup from the makeup farm.
And it's ironic because they waste so much makeup already at the beginning of Mad Max, but then they need to get more makeup.
That's right, yeah.
You're absolutely right. And look, and from my perspective...
By the way, sorry for everyone whose eardrums I just blew out with my Immortan Joe.
They said on YouTube that we're not loud enough. So,
okay.
So now we're just going to yell. This will teach you. I'll teach you for criticising us. But I find personally, I mean, everyone has their own little ratios, but I find that the important ratio is input time in compared to output time. As in the time you spend taking in information to the time you spend putting out information. Okay?
Yeah.
And I find myself, if it's less than a ratio of 20-1, I start talking shit. because
There you go.
Because I start to guess.
That's Chaz's Brown ratio.
That's pretty much the case. Now that's me personally. Other people might be better than that, but you take
I doubt it.
You take shortcuts. You rely on other people to fill. You start trusting Twitter. You start you just have to. You just don't have the time.
I would suggest you are a little bit more thorough in this department than I'm going to suggest most people's ratio is not that scrupulous.
Sure, probably not. But all I'm saying is that there is a ratio. Everyone has a ratio.
Yeah.
And if you're making a daily show, when it takes 5 or 6 hours for you just to do the basic stuff of TV without any reading or preparation or writing scripts, just sitting down and trying to think about how you're going to fit things and present things takes hours as well. It all takes time. And and the net result of that is if you're every day, your ratio might be 1-to-1. And then you're going to produce shit. No human being cannot produce shit under those conditions. I'm telling you now. So that's the first thing that's the first point I want to make.
That's a sentence that will stay with you. No human being cannot produce shit under those conditions.
Yeah, well, no one's ever given me a daily show, mate, so I'm okay. But the second thing that I want to put out...
Chaz's daily dump.
It will be the finest shit. The second point I want to make is that when you make TV... you're working hard, even if you're producing a show like Rachel Maddow's, you're working very, very hard. You get tired and you don't sleep. And what happens is...
Once again, Chaz, I suspect you're
possibly
kind of out on the tail, a few standard deviations away from the mean on this, possibly.
I'm not denying that, but all I'm saying is that when you're a little bit tired, you don't have to do what I do, but when you're a little bit tired, you're more susceptible to emotional reactions, right? And when you're surrounded by Twitter, because that's part of your research team, and you're part of this world that's got such high volume and so much defensive aggression, it's very difficult to not take that on yourself to a certain extent. And especially when you're going to cop a ton of shit, whatever you say, you start to get defensive, and defensiveness leads to defensive aggression yourself. And that, I think, is a key element to why all these daily news shows are so shit. Because the people who are
defensive aggression sounds like a foreign policy doctrine of the Bush administration.
Well, they're tired as well. Anyway, my personal point of view is that it's almost impossible to produce a good show under those conditions. And I cite, as an example, Chris Hayes, who is just about the smartest guy there is.
Very good on Twitter.
Cable news.
Yeah.
And even his show, when it became daily, suffered in quality compared to his weekly show in a big way. It's just so. Anyway, so I just want to flag that out there. So don't think, oh, what a dickhead for Rachel Maddow. I think I don't think people should make shows in those conditions.
I agree. And it's a bit like people who need to write an opinion column more than once a week.
Yeah.
It's like no one's got that many good takes in them.
No, they
Sorry.
Don't. They don't. Anyway, so I just want to put that out there. But let's talk about, we talk about bad things with Trump all the time. Let's talk about something good. Let's talk about a triumph of Trump. The Nobel Prize.
The Nobel Prize, yes.
That worked out their ears.
Outstanding stuff. So Trump has been nominated for a Nobel Prize by a far-right Norwegian parliamentarian.
He doesn't like Muslims, this guy. Doesn't like climate action either.
No.
In case you're wondering.
And so first of all, anyone can nominate anyone for a Nobel Prize.
I'm surprised you didn't nominate Trump for the Nobel Prize after the Israel deal.
But
you were such a big fan of.
Did not. Well, wasn't that what he was ostensibly nominated for?
Yes, he was. The UAE-Israel deal.
UAE-Israel deal. So, what's the Worldometer's current count of the death toll in the United States from coronavirus?
Oh, it's about 191. I'll just look.
No, I want a precise.
Okay,
I want a precise number here.
I'll give it to you, man.
Yeah,
you keep
because
talking,
I think we've got to calculate how deserving is Trump of the Nobel Peace Prize here, and I've got a fairly specific calculation.
Well, to be fair, when more people are dead, there's more peace.
Well, that's one angle.
I'm back in chaser mode now.
Yeah, we will talk in just a second as well about the two big peace deals this year have been one, the Israel UAE deal, which I've talked about quite.
196,000.
196,000 and
331.
196,331. But you subtract from that the number of all the people killed in wars between Israel and the United Arab Emirates, and you've got
196,331.
right. Okay, so we've talked about how it's not really a peace deal when two countries have been engaging in military exercises with each other since 2017. But let's look at the other triumph of diplomacy, which was the Serbia-Kosovo agreement.
Yes.
Except it wasn't actually an agreement between Serbia and Kosovo.
No,
Serbia and Kosovo signed separate agreements. This was even physically symbolized. They were sitting on different sides of Trump, signing different documents. Okay, so each of those was an agreement with the United States.
Why did they sign different agreements, Dr.
Because
Dave?
they were agreeing to different things.
That's right.
Now, the US wanted something a lot bigger than that. And I don't know if you're aware of this fact. So my colleague Goran Gurgic at the US Studies Center pointed out the US actually effectively brought down or contributed to bringing down the Kosovo government earlier this year.
Yeah.
Because they were pushing for a deal which would have involved a land swap, i.e. partition, right? Giving heavily Serbian parts of Kosovo back to Serbia. And Kosovars were not into that. But the US, which exercises a lot of power in the region, that essentially led to the fall of the Kosovo government. Okay, so it's not going to be a deal on that scale. Maybe, though, Serbia finally recognises Kosovo since it declared independence. No. There is no Serbian recognition of Kosovo. What there was is some vague aspiration of rail links.
Which already exists.
Yes. Road links and some very, very vague economic goals.
Most of which already existed.
Yes.
Yes.
So, but the hilarious bit, actually, this wasn't as hilarious as it looked. We all saw the footage of the signing ceremony where Trump announces
Play it on the show.
Serbia is going to move its embassy in Israel to Jerusalem, and the Serbian president looks rather confused. Now, it turns out
he starts flicking through the agreement. He looks over to his fellow minister. He puts his hand in his head.
Yes. Now, okay, you might be wondering, why was this even part of it? Right? And he actually did know that was in there.
Okay.
Yeah. No, he wasn't actually. I don't know quite what was going on there, but he knew what was in there.
But what I do know, sorry to interrupt,
Yes.
I should just say because it's relevant, that apparently as soon as, what he didn't know was that there was supposed to be, that the Americans were going to be talking about Kosovo. So Israel recognizing Kosovo.
Exactly, yes.
And so then they immediately renounced that embassy move.
Well,
to Jerusalem.
Times of Israel is reporting today that Serbian sources are saying if Israel recognises Kosovo, the deal's off.
Yes, exactly.
We are not moving our embassy. Now, you might be wondering, why was Israel embassy in this agreement between Serbia and Kosovo in the first place? Well, it's because, as I mentioned before, Trump and Netanyahu cooperate with each other to achieve political aims. So he pulled in a favour from Netanyahu. Can we put something in this agreement that will, benefit both of us? Because Kosovo then agreed to normalisation of relations with Israel and opening an embassy in Jerusalem, which would make it the first Muslim-majority country in the world to do so. Now, this allows Netanyahu to keep crowing about, see, I was able to make peace with the Muslim world and none of you said it was possible. Albeit it's hard to think of a less consequential country in the Muslim world.
Very small world.
Than Kosovo.
Very small world.
It's not what I'd call a valuable strategic partner for Israel.
No.
Exactly.
I wouldn't say that.
So anyway, this is part of this whole weird process of Netanyahu making these constant claims about his great diplomacy, Trump making all these claims about his diplomacy. I doubt that if Serbia and Kosovo had seriously been sitting down to hammer out an agreement, they would have had anything about recognition of Israel in there. But, that was a way of getting something out of the US.
But I got to note that, that former government that was overthrown for this deal, right? They're still incredibly popular.
Yeah.
They are leading the polls by a long way. And the former PM, who may well be the future PM,
yes,
he tweeted as soon as that deal was signed, "We are not bound by the commitments of Kosovo's illegitimate PM when we return to office." His signature below, incoherent and opaque text, is against the people's will, democratic order, and violates Kosovo's constitution and laws. They will not be ratified in our parliament. And they need that party to ratify it in the parliament. So it's just a dead deal.
Yeah. So not exactly screaming Nobel Prize.
No.
No. But, anyway, so that's this week's diplomacy triumph news.
Okay, so now we've talked about the positives.
Yes, yeah.
Let's talk about the scandals, because the thing is, this week there has been so many.
It has just
Bob
been
Woodward
scandal after
is just the beginning. There's been so much more. Okay, so let me just race through. I got three of them in a row. Jump in whenever you want. I'll just race through. Okay, number one, DeJoy.
Yes.
Right, Louis DeJoy, right, who we've been talking about with the post office. It turns out he's just been moonlighting as a post office guy. His main game is raising donations for the Republican Party.
Yeah.
He had this firm called New Breed Logistics. Now, I don't know what the hell that means, New Breed Logistics. It's sounding like an animal husbandry firm of some kind.
Sounds dodgy, yeah.
Sounds like they deal
Maybe
with pipettes and lubed up gloves.
Yes. Maybe they were partnered with Texas Labradoodles.
Maybe it always comes down to
That's
Labradoodles.
what we call an Easter egg.
Okay, 5 people who work there at New Breed Logistics, I'm going to keep on saying the name, I love it, said they were urged by DeJoy's aides or by DeJoy himself to write checks and attend $100,000 fundraisers. And when they did, write checks to the Republican Party, and when they did, they were then given in return bonuses that were significantly bigger than the donation that they made to the Republican Party. Now, for those who are in any doubt, that's against the law. But you're allowed to encourage donations. You're not allowed to reimburse them. That's how Dinesh D'Souza went to jail.
Who would have guessed?
Yeah, but for those who are saying, how do we know that they weren't just Republican donors? How do we know? Well, between 2000 and 2014, while DeJoy was doing this, 124 individuals who worked for the company gave more than $1 million to federal and state GOP candidates.
That's between them.
That's
Peppers.
between them.
That's not each.
God, no.
Louis, did you... Look, as much as we think this guy's corrupt, just want to clarify.
Yes. Thank you for clarifying.
Yes.
Many of them had not made political donations before. Most of them had not made any political donations after. During the same period, there were 9 employees in total that gave a combined $700 to Democrats. Okay, just throwing that out there, all right? Now, the interesting thing about this is that it's a felony to do this both federally and in North Carolina. Statute of limitations has expired federally. There is no statute of limitations in North Carolina. So Louis DeJoy might be.
That sounds like something that would be said very sinisterly in a TV show.
There is no statute of limitations in North Carolina. CSINC. Very good, very good. It's a Mask of God. Just said CSI NC. Now, there is a second element of this, the line to Congress element, which probably is not going to pan out. I'll just read you the quotes. This is what people are talking about. Jim Cooper from Tennessee, House Democrat. This is the transcript. Cooper. Well, Mr. DeJoy, as a mega donor for the Trump campaign, you are picked along with Michael Cohen and Elliot Broidy, 2 men who have already pled guilty to felonies to be the 3 deputy finance chairmen of the Republican National Committee. Did you pay back several of your top executives for contributing to Trump's campaign by bonusing or rewarding them? DeJoy. That's an outrageous claim, sir, and I resent it. I'm going to talk about DeJoy like he's English, just because...
That's an outrageous claim.
Just because he speaks like it. Cooper, I'm just asking a question. DeJoy. The answer is no. Old-timey English. Cooper says, so you did not bonus or reward any of your executives? DeJoy. No. Cooper, or anyone that you solicited for a contribution to the Trump campaign? No, sir. Not in whole or in part? Actually, during the Trump campaign, I wasn't even working at my company anymore. He's become Maxwell Smart. Anyway, the thing is, he's not while that is
There
a
was
felony,
like elements of Willy Wonka.
I'm not known for my impressions. You should treasure that. You won't get many
yeah,
impressions from
Peppers.
me.
That's a very special moment.
That's a real highlight. Where's my Nobel Prize?
Yeah.
But the reason that he's not in trouble there is for the discerning listener, you would note that Cooper screwed up his questions and kept on asking about Trump. And Trump was not around after DeJoy left.
There you go.
DeJoy left in 2014.
By the way, I
so it's to
just
Republicans.
love the word megadona.
Megadona.
Like, I don't know if there's any actual qualification for being a megadona, but it's such a powerful
It really is.
word.
Well,
Consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel, consonant.
Do you know
megadona?
do you know what megadonas sail? They sail superboats. So it was super yachts. Super yachts. That's another Easter egg for you. Okay, anyway, House Oversight Committee is investigating on this one. DeJoy, he's in trouble.
Yeah, and even Trump kind of threw him under the bus a bit.
Yeah. Second scandal, E. Jean Carroll.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, for those
Maybe someone you've forgotten about.
Yeah. Now, for those who don't remember, E. Jean Carroll was the gossip columnist who claimed to have been sexually assaulted by Trump in a change room. And the interesting thing about this, and the parallels continue between the Trump administration and the Clinton administration, she has a dress with what she claims to be semen on it. And she very much would like to get Donald Trump's DNA to run again, to check against that dress because she believes it's Donald Trump's semen. So that's where we're at. But the thing is, she's not suing him for rape. There's probably I don't remember for a fact there were statute of limitations issues there. I suspect there must be. Otherwise, I don't know why she wouldn't be. Maybe it's a balance of proof kind of thing. But she's actually suing him for defamation, not for rape.
Yeah.
For defamation because number one, Trump accused her of being a liar.
Yes.
And secondly, Trump took a few drive-bys of her looks on the way, so as if I'd want to rape her, kind of.
Yeah.
He didn't say it exactly like that, but that was the
implication.
That was definitely the implication. Okay, so she's suing him for defamation in New York. Now, what happened this week is that they've basically got to a position now where the judges are saying Trump is going to have a deposition in the next couple of months, and he's going to have to give up his DNA. And so what?
I've got to think there'd be easier ways to get Trump's DNA.
Yeah, you would think that.
Yeah, I think there are plenty of places where he leaves his DNA all over the place.
Yeah. I'm probably not going to explore that.
Well, no, I'm just thinking, he does these rallies in front of podiums.
That's true, yeah.
Where, you can see the sweat pouring off his body.
You'd be there with a little squeegee.
Wait till he's gone and swipe the lectern. You'd definitely get his DNA.
So that might be plan B.
Can't believe I'm the only one to have thought of this.
I'm sure you're not. I'm absolutely sure you're not. But so what's happened is this week is Bill Barr has ridden to the rescue, and as he likes to do, as he's wont to do for Donald Trump. He's never far away. And he and the Department of Justice is essentially replacing President Trump's private lawyers.
Yes.
And representing him. They're defending him against defamation lawsuit. Why? Because they're saying it's actually a federal issue, not a Trump personal issue.
Yeah.
Because he was representing the federal government when he commented on the physical appearance of a woman accusing him of rape.
Yeah.
He was acting as the president, they say. And so they're defending him. Now, this might seem very technical, but it's not. Let me explain why, very briefly. First of all,
I've got to say it doesn't seem that technical to me. But anyway,
you're
the lawyer. Explain.
The thing is that first of all, it wastes time to go from state court to federal court. It wastes time, so there's no deposition until after November, which is the first thing that he wants, right, to avoid. And the fact that he's so desperate to avoid his DNA test, I think, says something. I have to say.
I think it does. Yep.
But that we pushed past November. That's the first thing. Okay. Second thing, he won't pay for it, which is that's a nice thing for Trump.
Yep.
But this is the main thing. This is why I say it's a bit technical. You can't sue a government for defamation. If the government takes over and it becomes a case against the United States rather than a case against Donald Trump, they're going to drop the case. So this is his way of getting around a defamation case about rape. So that is the technical element, which sucks. So now, look, I don't think they're going to get away
Law
with
and order.
it. I don't think they're going to get away with it, but
No, I don't
that's
think
what
they
they're
will.
trying to do. Okay, so that's scandal number 2. Scandal number 3, whistleblower, Brian Murphy. You heard
Yes.
about this one? Okay, so
This is really fucked.
yeah, so he's the guy in charge of intelligence and analysis at the Department of Homeland Security. He's filed a series of complaints. I'll try and race them fast. Number 1, 2018, he said he was pressured to suggest that large numbers of known or suspected terrorists were illegally coming across the southern border, obviously to push the wall. He said he found 3. Evidence of 3 suspected terrorists,
Yes.
not even terrorists, suspected terrorists, 3. He told his supervisor it was an improper administration of an intelligence program and doing that would constitute a felony. Kirsten Nielsen testified to Congress soon after saying there were thousands.
That's right.
He was the guy who was supposed to provide her with information and he found 3.
Yeah.
So there's potential perjury to Congress.
Kirsten
there.
Nielsen, who has since had serious struggles with her conscience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, she may have a lot of time to think about those struggles if this continues on.
Yeah.
Number 2, after briefing administration officials about Russian attempts to interfere in the 2020 election, he was told by he might be acting at this point in time, DHS Secretary Chad Wolf to, quote, cease providing the intelligence assessments on the threat of Russian interference in the United States and instead start reporting on interference activities by China and Iran. He said that China and Iran weren't actually an issue for the election. He was told to focus on them anyway. Now, little time out here. You might recall about 2 weeks ago a story which we didn't get to, but now I'm working it back in, so you won't recall it because we didn't talk about it. Director of National Intelligence Ratcliffe is no longer briefing Congress in person because of leaks.
Yes.
Right? When I'm talking about briefing Congress and people, I'm talking about election interference. He's not briefing them about that anymore because of leaks. He says he's going to be making written briefings instead. Now, you might wonder, how does making a written briefing stop leaking? If anything, it would make it easier to leak.
It
wouldn't
makes it a lot easier just to sling that to a newspaper.
Yeah, that's it's not clear.
Yeah.
But what Ratcliffe says is he wants to emphasise we're going to do what is required by law. Those members who are entitled to the briefings and classified information will still get that information. What we won't be doing is all member verbal briefings. Okay, all right. So now we spoke to an assistant secretary from the Department of Homeland Security today on the show.
Oh, right.
Elizabeth Newman, who's now become anti-Trump.
Yep.
She just resigned recently, and she was saying that she was talking about this in particular, saying this is the way you have oversight by following up and getting people off script. So they're clearly trying to avoid that. But what Ratcliffe says, you can see where I'm going in a second, is that the reason they're doing it is because the leaks were for political purposes and they twisted information incorrectly. And he gave this example right here, Dr. Dave.
In this position, I'm privileged to see more intelligence than anyone else in the country other than the president. That includes all members of Congress. And as I see intelligence every single day, when you consider the fact that the amount of intelligence that we get, and we consider economically, militarily, technologically, China is the greatest threat that we face. I don't mean to minimize Russia. They are a serious national security threat. But day in, day out, the threats that we face from China are significantly greater. And I think that's clear. And anyone that sees intelligence knows that. And anyone who says otherwise is just politicizing intelligence.
Politicizing intelligence.
Isn't that ironic? Now, for those who actually watched that clip rather than listen to it, you would have been amused by the symbolism of as soon as Ratcliffe started talking, he was lost in a world of blackness as the green screen behind him turned black, and then he disappeared entirely.
Yeah.
He was replaced by the
By a
Capitol
picture
building.
of Congress, yeah.
Yeah. So that was darkly
That's
symbolic.
awesome. Yeah.
But anyway, so once again, the Murphy was saying, I want to talk about Russia. They were saying, no, you must talk about China, even though you believe that China is no threat for the election. And then Ratcliffe is out there telling people that's what the intelligence says. Okay, so that's number 2. Number 3, the one which is prompted this whistleblower complaint is acting DHS Secretary Chad Wolf and Deputy Ken
Cuccinelli,
thank you. Halted, I'm the Italian, I actually got that. Halted the distribution of a homeland threat assessment because of how, quote, it would reflect upon President Trump. 2 sections were specifically labelled as concerns, says the complaint: white supremacy and Russian influence in the United States. How about that? Mr. Cuccinelli stated that Mr. Murphy needed to specifically modify the section on white supremacy in a manner that made the threat appear less severe, as well as include information on the prominence of violent left-wing groups.
Oh, violent left-wing groups.
Mr. Murphy declined to make the requested modifications and informed Mr. Cuccinelli that it would constitute censorship of analysis and the improper administration of an intelligence program. When Murphy refused to comply, he was demoted, hence the whistleblower complaint for retaliation. Okay? Now, this guy's got the receipts. Murphy's complained about inappropriate pressure to Undersecretary David Glover from March 2018 repeatedly to May 2020. He made similar disclosures to the Deputy Director, Sue Gordon, in 2019, to Assistant National Secretary Sarah Tinsley 6 times earlier this year to Kash Patel. Basically, the guy hasn't shut up about this. So he has the receipts everywhere. House Democrats are going to be talking to him Tuesday after next.
Yeah.
So they're all the scandals. Do you have anything to say about any of those scandals?
There was an additional thing, actually, I think, on the first point, where he was told to play down the violent conditions in Central America that were actually forcing people to go to the United States in the first place. I mean, this is... It's one of those things that is so appalling to hear it and see it, and yet not surprising at the same time. And I mean, the worst of it is that just downplaying of the white supremacist threat.
Who, by the way, the assistant secretary we were talking to today said is by far the biggest threat.
Yeah, I mean, just the number of deaths. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about the comparative, white supremacists versus Antifa. Like, they've got fundamentally different aims. Antifa, when you see them, yes, they do get people, coming in from over the border to cause a ruckus, but fundamentally it's all about local fights over local areas. White supremacists have got fundamentally different. White supremacists are about revolution, right? They are actually about starting a civil war. They are about
your Boogaloo boys.
Bringing about the racial cleansing of the United States. It's appalling. By the way, on that note, so something we talked about last week, which was the Antifa, the one Antifa guy who has killed someone, Michael Reinold, 48-year-old guy, shot someone, ran away. He should have been arrested and charged with murder and put on trial, but he never will be. Because the cops shot him. Now, there are now witness accounts of that shooting that say he was on his phone and eating a gummy worm at the time that he was shot dead by the cops. Right? There was not really an attempt to actually arrest him. It was just an execution. You compare that to the fate of Kyle Rittenhouse, who actually tried to surrender to the police and they weren't interested in it at all. One of the reasons why things get so out of hand in Portland is because of a perception that the cops are on the side of the white supremacists. And when something like that happens, as I say, this guy should have been charged with murder because it does look like, it looks like what he did was a murder.
Yes, it does.
I don't know the legal ins and outs. I don't know what degree of murder it would have been. But, you would have thought he should have been charged with murder, should have been tried, should have been punished.
The indictment charge, which may or may not be true, says that he was actually hiding in a car park waiting for that guy to come along. Yeah. So,
So I'm not holding a candle for this guy at all. He's a probable murderer. Yeah. But, yes, you look at the way his life ends. Shot to death by cops. It looks like the cops basically taking revenge on behalf of the far right.
Yeah, I want to hear a bit more about that one, but I take your point. Yeah, sure. Yeah. So, I talked for a long time then, so let's give you a go here, Dave. Why don't you talk to us about polling?
Okay, so polling this week was interesting because it was we're being pulled in 2 separate directions by the polls this week. On the one hand, the big story was just definite tightening in Florida.
Yes.
It is impossible to deny this now. It's not just noise. We have one of the highest quality polls, which is the MASTERLIST poll that gets the treasured A+ from 538.com, showing a dead heat between them. That, by the way, what's this thing that polls are doing now of saying, well, it's a sample of likely voters, but we're putting a likely filter?
I haven't seen that.
That's what MASTERLIST did.
A likely filter.
Well, I'm paraphrasing, but yeah, they're like, okay, we've got these likely voters, and we've got this subset of really likely voters.
Oh, okay.
Now, there have been other polls. Your friends at Trafalgar
love them.
Had Trump up by 3.
Have you heard of the shy Trumper theory?
Yeah. Quinnipiac had Biden up by 3. There was a more Democratic-affiliated poll that had Biden up by 4. But so the general picture is it's a dead heat.
Yeah.
There. And that is Florida being Florida. Like, of 40 million votes cast in Florida over the last however many elections, there's less than 100,000 votes in the overall aggregate result. It's an incredibly tightly balanced. Sorry, that is a mixed metaphor. It's an incredibly balanced state. It's a state that we did note last week was not part of the blue wave of 2018. Showed a bit of stubbornness. And also, I mean, it has been a few points to the right of the rest of the country in the last few presidential cycles. Here are 2 other interesting little bits of data. One was a poll conducted by the Miami Herald that showed Biden leading by 17 there, which is potentially not good news because Clinton won that by 26.
This is Miami-Dade.
Yes. Yeah. So this is Miami-Dade. Yeah. Also showing a kind of alarming weakness among Latinos.
Yes.
For Biden. Now, Latinos have never been Biden's strong suit.
No, they haven't.
Anywhere, particularly not in Florida, where Trump has definitely raised his numbers with Latinos, especially among older Cuban Americans who weren't that enamored with Trump to begin with because, Rubio was their boy. But Trump is, by basically going back into a state of conflict with Cuba. They really like that. Yeah, Venezuelans as well. So, but even with non-Cuban Latinos, Biden is struggling a bit.
Yeah, go on.
And we're now seeing this really interesting thing where Biden is getting, he's doing better with traditional Republican constituencies like older whites in Florida, but that could be counterbalanced by the fact he's losing the kind of Latino numbers that Obama was getting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that is the weird thing that's happening. That he's winning the Republican constituency away from them, but losing the Democrat constituency. Well, no, it's not really Democrat because Cubans have never been.
Cubans have never been a Democratic.
But the Latinos. I was going to say that one thing is that I think that some people haven't been paying enough attention to with the Cubans is that this is not a Trump thing. This has been going on for a while. Let me give you some numbers.
Yes.
2008, 38% of Cuban Americans voted for Obama. In 2012, Obama won 47%.
Yes, that was
that's right.
That was pretty remarkable. Yes.
And then Trump won 54% in 2016 in the Cubans. And in 2018, the Cubans broke 2-1 to Republicans. So what they're doing is reverting to where they were in 2008.
Yes.
Essentially.
Yep.
So that's the first thing. Second thing is it's really interesting the difference between. It's not a huge surprise that Cubans might be different to other Hispanics.
Yes.
They're not all a monolith, but to the extent that they, it's quite interesting how different Mexican Hispanics vote to Cuban Hispanics.
Yes.
In particular, the GQR poll in Florida found Biden ahead 51-46.
Yeah.
Trump was ahead by 18 points amongst Cuban Hispanics. Biden was ahead by 17 amongst non-Cuban Hispanics.
Yes.
But Cuban Hispanics are the plurality of Hispanics in Florida.
By the way, we should also note there is a bit of a caveat on these polls that once you start getting into smaller and smaller subsets of the population, you've got much, much bigger confidence intervals. Although a bright spot for Biden in all of this in Florida was that the what's the Tampa newspaper called? The
Tampa Times.
Tampa Times.
Yeah.
They did a survey of Pinellas County, which is often renowned as like the most one of the most volatile counties in the whole United States. and as a result can be a real weather vane, that showed Biden up by 16 there when Clinton had won that by 4.
Okay.
So
Do they have a lot of old people?
yes, it does.
Okay.
So that also sort of is in accordance with that story. So Florida, it's going to be very close.
Yeah,
It's going to be like it is every election. And it would be very, very symbolically important for Biden to win it because that would basically end the contest on election night. But he could win without Florida.
Oh, yeah.
That's becoming increasingly clear this week.
Just before we go on, I just wanted to say one more thing about Hispanics
Yes.
so I can leave them behind and then you can move on. The Cuban Hispanics, you just need to realize, are mostly in Florida. When we talk about Cuban Hispanics,
Yes.
80% of Hispanics in Texas and Arizona are Mexicans.
Mm-hmm.
And there was, like I said, there was a plurality in Florida of Cubans. But having said that, Trump is doing better with Hispanics, even Mexican Hispanics, than he did against Clinton.
Yes.
In 2016, Trump won 28% Hispanic vote in the exit polls. The last Pew said 35% he was winning, and the last Emerson College poll said 37%. So he's doing well amongst all Hispanics. Now go on.
Yes, yeah, which is, I mean, it's getting a little bit back more towards the historic norm for Republicans, mid-30s. George W. Bush did unusually well, mid-40s, high 40s, but okay, but what's happening in the rest of the country? Well, after a series of polls that looked a bit scary for Biden in Pennsylvania, then that same Marist poll showed him up by 9 in Pennsylvania. And he had a slew of other good polls in Pennsylvania as well, which is not to say that he's out of the woods there, but it is to suggest that Pennsylvania doesn't seem to be going through that same process that Florida is going to, becoming a knife-edge state. Okay.
Having said that, Pennsylvania is more important to him than Florida.
Pennsylvania is absolutely, yes. Yeah. Biden couldn't afford to lose both Pennsylvania and Florida. If he holds Pennsylvania, though, he's in good shape.
Yeah.
Wisconsin continues to look very good for Biden. Arizona continues to look almost miraculously good. Before you get too excited, though, remember Arizona's only 10 or 11 votes. Is it something like that?
It's the same as Wisconsin, I think.
Yeah.
So, by the way, just say quickly, Arizona is the only state, I believe, that Biden's been increasing his margin across the conventions by more than 1 point.
Yes. Now, these are all states that have been polled a lot in the last few weeks. One thing we have to start looking at, and the campaigns have definitely been looking at, is states that haven't been polled so much. For example, there hasn't been a lot of high-quality polling of Michigan recently. And despite all that,
Trafalgar?
Despite all the commotion about Republicans actually pulling out. By the way, this is Michigan Corner for this week.
It's the Michigan Corner.
Yeah. Both campaigns, please.
Stop dancing, please.
Both campaigns have been there this week. So Biden was in Warren, Michigan, which actually is traditionally a conservative stronghold in the Detroit suburbs, holding a fairly low-key, socially distanced event. Trump was in an airport hangar in Saginaw this afternoon.
Okay.
Now, so we don't have a very good handle on what's happening in Michigan because there just isn't high-quality polling there. I suspect Biden is substantially ahead there. But we don't really know. Now, Trump was making some wild claims this afternoon in Michigan about reviving the auto industry. Now, that actually won't fly in Michigan. It'll fly with his supporters, but as I've mentioned before, Michigan media obsessively covers the auto industry. Everyone knows what has actually been going on with the auto industry in Michigan. And Obama, the moment that he passed that $750 million bailout of the auto industry in 2009, that probably guaranteed his re-election in Michigan in 2012. And Biden is going to be able to coast off that fairly successfully. This is not something that Trump can really incorporate into his fantasies very effectively. Like the Detroit Free Press was immediately all over him this afternoon. You might think, what does that matter? Local media is actually important in Michigan. So state-based media is important. People do listen to it. And yeah, he's not going to be able to hoodwink anyone over the state of the auto industry in Michigan. Okay, so both candidates and Michigan, that's got 16 or 17 electoral college votes, so that's a significant prize. One that's been talked about a lot recently that we've talked about because we're ahead of the curve, Nevada.
So we are. Yes.
Yeah, last poll there was in, I believe someone is going to do a poll there, but both campaigns are looking at Nevada. John Ralston, the guru of all things Nevada, has pointed out that the formidable Democratic Party machine there has effectively been switched off by the coronavirus.
Yeah, because the culinary union is home.
Yes, yeah. Culinary union is home. The usual registration drives can't happen. So that could be a place where Biden is in trouble in a way that might not even be reflected in opinion polls. Another thing is there hasn't been a single poll of Oregon.
Do you think there's any chance that could be purple?
It's possible. I mean, Oregon is, it's one of these quite polarized states. Basically, the Democratic vote is in Portland. It's in a couple of other places, college towns like Eugene. It's, for the most part, it's a red state.
Okay.
But it's got enough blue population that, but it would be helpful to have a poll there. I mean, sure. I doubt that Trump has improved his standing in Oregon over the last few weeks.
Sure. Yeah.
But it would be useful to have something there.
Okay. I reckon it's a great call. I mean, we did talk about this before, but I reckon it's a great call talking about Nevada.
Yeah.
I really
Let's
do.
congratulate ourselves more on this.
Like, it's not just the unions thing, but it's also the Latinos thing. Like, there's a lot of unknowns there, I feel.
Yeah. Biden struggled in the primary with the Latinos. I mean, that primary was important for him because it was the first one where he hadn't come fourth. He came second in that one. That was the beginning of the comeback. But, yeah, still, he did not do well. It was Sanders got huge amounts of the Latino vote there.
I was going to say, on Pennsylvania,
yes.
which I think is probably going to be the critical state.
Yes. It's had the privileged position on the snake chart for a while now.
It has. And also, you just look at the polls. It's the polls have been extremely inconsistent there.
They have been.
Yeah, which is whenever I see that, I think,
something's going on here.
Yes, yeah. And Biden has a genuine weakness there, which Trump is, I think, intelligently trying to exploit, which is fracking.
Yeah.
And Biden really dug a grave for himself during the primary on this. And once again, I'm paying myself on the back here, but yeah, it was really obvious even then that he was creating problems for himself if he became a general election candidate, because fracking is such a big deal in Pennsylvania. And this week, Kamala Harris came on board as well, and she was even more committed to ending fracking during the primary. And she did her best. She really did. I'll give her credit, actually, for someone who clearly does not have their heart in this policy. She defended it as well as you possibly. I felt like she earned her vice presidency right here.
Joe Biden has said, quote, "I am not banning fracking." During your primary campaign, you said that you supported a ban. Are you comfortable with Joe Biden's position?
Yes, because Joe is saying, listen, one, those are good paying jobs in places like Pennsylvania. And two, that we need to also invest and put a significant investment in the good-paying union jobs that we can create around clean energy, around renewable energy. And that is the kind of approach we need to have. But always understanding that it's a false choice to suggest that we either take care of jobs or we take care of our environment. We can do both, and we should do both.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that for explicitly name-checking Pennsylvania.
Yes, yeah.
It's not like she was there.
No.
She just specifically mentioned Pennsylvania and then specifically name-check unions.
Unions. That was like the one word that I even noticed in that whole interview.
And then she even cited the false choice concept, which she actually specifically derided during the primaries. She worked so hard there. So good try, Kamala. But it's a real vulnerability, I feel.
It is
for Biden in that area. And Trump just keeps talking about it. All his ads in Pennsylvania are
Yes.
talking about fracking. Like that is going to be an interesting area, I feel. And by contrast, what Joe Biden's doing, which I feel is... Sorry, do you want to talk about fracking before I went on to Joe?
No.
Yeah. What Joe Biden's doing, which I feel is kind of unfair, but, it's par for the course in elections, is he's exploiting... Because of his advantage over old people
Yes.
that he has, he understands them well. He is exploiting a misunderstanding. Let's be blunt about this. What he's saying is untrue. I'll explain the policy quickly, and then I'll play you the ad.
Yeah.
Right. The policy is: do you remember Trump with his executive orders? Right. They came in when all the stimulus for COVID dropped, and he
Yes.
came and said, "Oh, I'll fix it all up with my." with my executive orders. One of them was to stop to have a payroll tax cut, a temporary payroll tax cut that's going to get paid back eventually, although he wants to end it.
It's more of a holiday would be the correct term. For
Exactly. It's
where a lot of employers aren't even going to stop withholding it because they know that they're going to have to. Yeah.
It's really a nothing. It's not doing anything. But what the Democrats are doing...
did he go there coming for your Social Security?
Exactly. Democrats are saying that if he gets his way...
Yep.
And we don't, and they keep that payroll tax cut, then then Social Security will be defunded because the payroll tax pays for Social Security. That's the way it works. Now, of course, in reality, that would not happen for two reasons. Number one, because Trump has already said that he will put the money in the trust fund from the general collection of revenue anyway.
And his word is gold.
I take your point, but he specifically said he's not going to do what they said. And secondly, of course, you're going to not pay Social Security to old people and lose an election rather than just paying out of general revenue? Of course they'll pay out of general revenue. That would be suicide.
I don't know.
Dude.
The Republicans, no, I'm not talking about Trump. I'm talking about the Republicans who actually control the money. Because as all of my students know, it's Congress that has the power of the purse.
Yeah, I know.
They've proven pretty willing in recent weeks to just go, no.
I know, but man, cutting Social Security would be quite counterproductive, I feel, when you're running for an election.
For our Australian audience, think of the way that John Barilaro, the leader of the New South Wales National Party this week, decided that war on koalas was going to be the point that he was going to finally take a stand as a coalition partner against the Liberals, setting up this situation where Gladys Berejiklian bravely stared down this cowardly bully in order to save the koalas, which does really sound like the plot of a late 80s kids TV show.
It does. It does.
Thing is,
Yahoo Serious.
Yeah. People do stupid things to make a point sometimes in politics.
I reckon Republicans are more likely to come and kill our koalas.
Well,
than they are
but
to
yeah,
kill
there's another point here which someone pointed out, which is if Republicans actually think that they're going to lose in this year, they think that what's coming next is a Tea Party style conservative purity movement. They want to be in on the ground floor.
Well, they'll need to convince some Democrats to vote with them.
Yes.
Let me play the ad to see just a pure classic scare campaign in effect.
The chief actuary of the Social Security Administration just released an analysis of Trump's planned cuts to Social Security. Under Trump's plan, Social Security would become permanently depleted by the middle of calendar year 2023. If Trump gets his way, Social Security benefits will run out in just 3 years from now. Don't let it happen. Joe Biden will protect Social Security.
I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
Don't vote for your own death.
So that is a classic one right there.
Joe will not kill you.
By the way, for those who are watching this rather than listening to this, that guy in that ad needs Social Security badly because he's doing nothing but staring out of windows all day. So he desperately needs to do something. He needs to go to a movie or something, that guy. Anyway, all right, but that's what seems to me to be the trade-off at the moment in places like Pennsylvania. Scaring Social Security versus scaring fracking.
Yeah, and at the moment the polling is suggesting that Biden is getting the better end of that deal.
Yeah, I would suggest that too.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about Iraq withdrawing troops? Hey, Trump is like he's like a modern peacenik because he is withdrawing 3,000 troops from Iraq, from 5,200 down to 2,200. Did you hear this?
Yeah.
He's doing it 2 months before an election just because it's the right time. And I should point out, before I let you go,
Yes.
that according to at least an article I read, when they say 5,200 troops, there actually been 8,500 troops during the year, but they don't count them because they're temporary. They come in and out.
Yeah.
So what do you reckon? Are you convinced?
You know how many troops Obama withdrew from Iraq?
How many?
145,000.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I got a tweet from Justin Amash. You know I like Justin Amash.
Yeah, I love Justin.
Yeah,
Yes.
he's from Michigan.
Yeah.
Corner. This is the tweet. From the start of his term to the end, Barack Obama reduced troop levels in Afghanistan by 25,000 and Iraq by 140,000. Donald Trump has so far reduced those troop levels by 0, with hopes of reducing troop levels in Afghanistan by 4,000 and Iraq by 2,000. That's all he said.
To be fair to Trump, I can't believe I'm saying this, but Obama was coming from a much higher level.
He was.
But still, Amash, the general point is correct. Yeah. And one of the things that annoyed me last week when all of these revelations came out about these anonymously sourced revelations about Trump's contempt for the military as losers and suckers.
The Atlantic story, yeah.
And this was then sort of a lot of Trump's allies tried to spin this into, well, he's a critic of the military-industrial complex. And then Trump himself ran with that.
He's the new Eisenhower.
Saying, oh, well, I think the troops still love me, but maybe the top brass doesn't because, I don't fight those wars that enrich the weapons manufacturers, so maybe the Pentagon doesn't love me, which, I mean, that was to people who wanted, to the people who have had this belief that Trump is somehow this anti-war figure, that was exactly what they've been waiting to hear for years and years and years. But it's just not borne out by any of the facts. First of all, just in terms of the Pentagon and weapons manufacturers, the Trump era has been a golden age for them because
Saudi Arabia.
He's ramped up. He's ramped up the spending without putting US troops in harm's way. Yeah. Right? It's best of both worlds for them. No. I think he's got quite a good understanding of how the military-industrial complex works, but his whole approach has been to feed it. Can I
just point out, they've increased bombing in Afghanistan by 800%.
Exactly. Trump's increased bombing everywhere. Yeah. Even though the term drone will, for many people, always be associated with Obama, Trump has expanded the drone war. He's relaxed the kinds of rules of engagement around the drone war. So it's not as if Obama, because Obama often gets characterized as a warmonger, Trump as, the peacenik. That is not what has happened at all. As much as I object to many aspects of Obama's foreign policy, it's not as if Trump has actually done any better in that respect. Also, it's just not true that the Trumps love troops. Sorry, that
Trumps love troops?
That the troops love Trump. Sorry,
yes.
It's Friday afternoon.
It's definitely not true.
Because there was a survey in the Military Times that showed them backing Biden 41 to 37%. Now, that is incredibly unusual to find active service military personnel backing a Democrat over a Republican.
Take a guess, Dr. Dave.
Yeah.
What percentage of those people, 41% of whom supported Biden, were Democrats?
20?
16. That's not a good sign for Trump.
No, that is not a good sign at all. Now, it is true that as there always has been, officers are less likely to like Trump than enlisted men.
Yeah, what I've been trying to do is find those numbers. I've got.
Yeah, so I believe it was Trump's, but it's still not great with so Trump's approval with enlisted men is now at 47%. So that's, I think, slightly higher than the rest of the population, but not what a sitting Republican president would usually have with them. His disapproval's like 59% with officers, but these are still not great numbers for him at all with the military. And I don't think...
Just found it. You're right. Well done.
Yes. And I don't think that it's because he has not been feeding the military-industrial complex. The military-industrial complex is now looking like one of those dogs that people have just fed too much. Yeah, that it will actually be dangerous to put it on a diet. It's one of those lose-lose situations. Yeah. No, it's nothing about Trump gels that well with the military worldview.
Yeah, I suddenly remembered. It was like a flash. Just hit me, boom, right in the forehead.
Yeah.
Congress literally passed a bill to stop Trump selling arms to the Middle East, and he vetoed it.
To Saudi Arabia and the UAE.
He vetoed the bill,
Yes.
Mr. Anti-Military Industrial Complex.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. Okay,
So in case you were wondering about that, is Trump really a foe of the military-industrial
Probably
complex? The answer is no.
Quick check-in on mail-in voting. It started in North Carolina.
Really?
They've sent out their absentee ballots.
I know someone who was among the first 30 people in the United States to vote.
They've sent out 600,000 of them so far in North Carolina. And this is what we've been talking about so far. Playing itself out. 52% of the requested ballots were from Democrats, 16% from Republicans, 31% from no party affiliation. A couple of some random concerns, because I've got them every single week. The Postal Service sets a goal for itself to deliver 96% of election mail in a timely fashion during the election. That's their goal. Go, guys. Only screw up 4% of the votes.
96%. 96%.
In the lowest performing processing distribution centres reviewed by the Inspector General in 2018, 84% arrived on time.
Ooh.
In 2018, of the 42 million non-overseas and military mailed ballots, 10.5 million ballots
This is not going to be good.
sent to voters by mail were undeliverable, spoiled, voted, surrendered by the voters on or before election day, or were otherwise unaccounted for. Essentially missing ballots. 28%. Now, these kinds of stats, obviously everyone's listening to PEP in America, obviously. And this is affecting the people who want to vote, because in July, Emerson found 61% of Florida Democrats plan to vote by absentee ballot. In August, 32% of Florida Democrats said they want to vote. Now, the fear that Democrats have is that they're not going to just turn out to vote in person. They just won't vote.
Yeah.
That's the fear, which is obviously what Donald Trump was playing for as well.
Yes.
And Republicans went from 27% to 19% during that same period as well, I should say.
They are listening to us.
Yeah, of course they are. They're sensible.
Except Louis DeJoy is telling all his employees, no, you may not listen to PEP.
That's kind of like my voice of his. Yeah. I've got some homework for you. I want you to read.
Me or for the...
For them, not you. You're a professor. You don't need any of this shit. I've got an op-ed for you to read for those who are interested in mail order voting. It was very interesting. From Ben Ginsberg, who was a 38-year veteran.
Yeah.
Of the GOP.
Did you just call it mail order voting?
I did. That's exactly what I said.
Start typing in mail order into your...
My mind does wander. Anyway, this guy's been doing it for 38 years. He is he goes on and on and on about all he's been doing to try and find voter fraud over the decades.
Yes.
And he basically says it ain't happening.
Yeah, this is the same way that every attempt to find voter fraud ends.
Yeah.
This is why Donald Trump is telling people to commit voter fraud.
Yeah, that's right.
Be the fraud that you want to see in the world.
I'll just read you a direct quote from his article. The Heritage Foundation election fraud database has compiled every instance of any kind of voter fraud it could find since 1982. It contains 1,296 incidents, a minuscule percentage of the votes cast. When Chris Kobach was Kansas Secretary of State, he pushed election law reforms premised on the need to root out election fraud and in particular prevent voting by non-citizens. When these restrictions were challenged in court, his case crumbled. Given the opportunity to present evidence and expert testimony, Kobach was unable to substantiate his fears of stolen elections. He was eventually held in contempt and sanctioned by the court. And he goes on. So anyway, I want you to read that because it's interesting. And also, this is the most interesting thing. He's retired, that guy.
Yes.
Robert Kellner is not retired. He's a current Republican election lawyer who actually retweeted an article with an endorsement. So I don't know what he's doing. I don't know what's going on with Robert Kellner. But yeah, the revolution is on. Talking about the revolution,
Yes.
Dave, talk to me about the Supreme Court revolution.
Yes, so
Ted Cruz for
Trump
court.
put out this list that people found a bit puzzling this week of potential Supreme Court nominees for the next term.
This is his third list, isn't it? Third list?
Yes.
We had 2 lists in
Yes,
2016.
I almost said the next semester. Sorry, I've got
That's all right.
lecturer brain. I'm
I talked about mail order
3
voting.
weeks
We're
into
even.
into teaching. Okay, so this is very different from his approach in his first term, where he was all like, I'm going to select from this list that conservative legal scholars provide me with. And it's been pointed out that was a strategically very smart thing to do. That sent exactly the right signal to his supporters while not getting Democrats very riled up. Usually this is this asymmetry that Republicans really use to their advantage. Democrats don't get that riled up about the prospect of the courts. They should, but they just don't. Conservatives and Republicans really do. Trump might be jeopardizing that strategy a little bit by putting out this list of potential Supreme Court judges that includes some real favourites of the show. Tom Cotton,
Yes.
for example.
There's no job he can't do.
Yeah, Josh Hawley.
Josh Hawley, we love him. We love him.
And Ted Cruz.
Yeah.
Let me remind you again, it is the anniversary of 9/11. So, yeah, and a lot of the sort of really smart liberal commentators were just baffled by this decision. They're like, okay, we're used to Trump just trolling us like this, but why is he doing it in a way, why is he doing it in a way that's actually going to motivate voters on the other side when there's absolutely no need for him to do it? I've got a very simple answer to that.
Mm-hmm.
He does want to appoint these people if he gets a second term because he will be getting rid of Don Jr.'s primary competitors. You can't run for president when you're a Supreme Court judge.
Look, that is true.
Because we've talked about this before. Cotton, Hawley, they are setting themselves up for runs in 2024. Ted Cruz, I'm sure, is going to have a go at it as well, but he could easily be one of the first to exit the field. I am pretty sure this is what Trump is doing.
Okay, well, what I would say to that is that unless he is intending to appoint all 3 of them in this weird sort of Frankenstein human centipede style judge, then I don't think he can clear all of them. Secondly, that list does not matter. Neither Gorsuch nor Kavanaugh was on his first list.
That's true.
So he's going to appoint whoever the hell he likes. This is pure propaganda, and you think the Republicans will work this out by now. So it's
Sorry, I prefer my theory.
I feel like. I mean, I'm not going to comment on what the hell he was thinking with Cotton, Hawley, and Cruz because I don't know, but I feel like the reason that list exists is because the Bob Woodward book exists, and he was trying to put out anything.
I'm going to
all.
appoint Tom Cotton to the Supreme Court.
Anything at all. I just think he was just going, guys, over here, have a look. Look at this list. Remember this list? Very important list. That's what I reckon. But it's the bottom line is he can nail Josh Hawley's skull to the Supreme Court bench, and Josh Hawley will still remove himself from there and run for president. You are not going to stop Josh Hawley from running for president. Now, what you do, I'm sorry, all people trying to clear the path. Josh Hawley, do not get between him and the presidency. That's all I'm saying. If you respect your gonads, do not get between Josh Hawley and the presidency.
Did you see his tweet this afternoon, by the way?
Wait, which one?
So this was the NFL season has begun.
Yep.
Game between Kansas City Chiefs, Super Bowl champions, and the Houston Texans. They did the most mild kind of, I wouldn't even call it protest, acknowledgement of the racial environment that you could possibly do, which was Texans players and Chiefs players, including Patrick Mahomes, the quarterback, linked arms on the field. The Kansas City crowd booed them.
Very divisive.
The lesson is, no, there is no form of protest to do with race that is acceptable to these people, right? So, yeah, when NBA players decided to take the, delay games by a few days, that was, how can you politicise sports like this? No, there is never going to be all this concern trolling about, protest is a great and noble thing. You just can't burn down buildings. It's like, no. Whatever form of protest you do, it's going to be, it's not going to be acceptable. You know what is acceptable? Kayleigh McEnany tweeted on the 4th of September a picture of one of Trump's ridiculous aircraft hangar rallies in Latrobe, Pennsylvania.
Yes.
She tweeted a picture of the overflow crowd and said, "It's the Trump peaceful protest." That is what they consider a legitimate form of protest. A rally in favour of the incumbent president.
And I tell you what, they're not peaceful.
And how do you protest for racial justice? By thanking Mr. Trump for doing more for African Americans than any other person has ever done and pointing out how unfair the media is to him.
At least they're offering you a pathway, Dave. That's fair enough. No, look, I will say that while we're talking Supreme Court, we've kind of moved off it, but I did find a poll, which I thought was interesting.
You found a poll,
who would have thought? It's from Gallup, Supreme Court approval rating.
Yes.
Right now, take a guess what the approval rating of the Supreme Court is right now.
50%?
58%.
Okay.
58%. It's the highest since 2009. So if the left do decide to get angry about the Supreme Court and start trying to stack it.
I wonder,
58%
is that do you think that's because of that raft of cases at the end of the year where the Supreme Court unexpectedly went liberal quite a lot of times?
I'll tell you why I don't think it is.
Why?
Because this is an old poll. This is 2018. But still.
Yeah.
But still. In 2018, C-SPAN poll, 52% could not name a single Supreme Court justice. That's why I don't think.
Good point. Good point.
That Americans are not us. They are not you and me, Dr. Dave.
No.
It's right across the board, by the way. Democrats 56% approval, Republicans 60% approval, Independents 57% approval.
Yeah.
It's just very popular at the moment, and I don't know why. This has been a long-term thing. It's been slowly going up for a while. But I do bring it up just to say that if we do have like a stacking the Supreme Court type scenario down the track, it won't be hard to demagogue that if the approval rating is around 60% to begin with.
Yes.
Before we even get there. So, I should, one thing as well, just, I don't know. I'm not going to be able to work this in. That's fine. Don't worry about it. I'm just looking at the time.
Got very little time.
I know. I've got 10 minutes left.
Hurry up.
Okay. All right. I'm just going to do a law and order check-in quickly. Okay. All right. Because I've got some interesting polls about this.
Okay.
You'll love this.
Okay. Yeah. Just go.
Okay. All right.
You don't need my permission, Chase.
Okay. All right. First of all, the law and order thing is not working out quite so well at the moment.
No.
41% of Americans consider the protesters to be mostly peaceful, 40% to be mostly violent, compared to 54% mostly peaceful, 31% mostly violent back in July. You might go, well, hang on, that means Trump is making progress here. He spent the last 2 months talking about nothing but. If he's moved at 10%, that's not enough. Okay. According to Politico, 49% of registered voters support the latest protest, 32% oppose them. Okay, so that's a current poll.
Just a party line.
Yeah. Okay, so it's just not going to work. This is interesting. 62% were very or somewhat concerned about right-wing extremists. 54% said the same of the left wing. So even now, it's still people still worry about right. That's a YouGov poll.
Yeah.
59% of independents were concerned about right-wing extremists compared to 53%. Swing states. Let's talk about swing states with this law and order thing. Monmouth, when asked how worried they were about crime and lower property values being brought to their own particular neighbourhoods, that's what he's trying to do, a full 74, that's what Trump's trying to sell, a full 74% of Pennsylvania voters replied they were not too or not at all concerned, including 66% of those over 65.
Wow.
75% of non-college whites.
Oh, dear.
And 75% of those in, wait for it, deeply pro-Trump counties.
Wow.
He's not selling it to his own base. ABC Ipsos, 59% say Biden is more likely to reduce violence. 39% say Trump is. 55% say Trump has made things worse. 13% say Trump has made things better. And this is the one. This is the poll I really want to bring to you guys. This is why it's not 1968.
Mm-hmm.
This is a poll from 1968.
Yes.
This is a Harris poll from August 1968.
Okay.
81% of Americans believe that law and order has broken down in this country, they said in 1968.
Mm-hmm.
59% said that Negroes who start riots, quote, are a major cause. 50% of white Americans said Negroes smell different. 44% of whites said that blacks, in their view, had less native intelligence. That's all from the same poll.
Yeah, that was, yes.
This is not 1968.
So, yes.
Yeah, so things have changed a lot. And trying to run the same arguments that people ran when 50% of white Americans said Negroes smell different.
Yeah.
And they said it to pollsters.
Yes.
To their face.
Yeah.
So that is not necessarily a winning strategy in my view.
No.
Dave, you got...
Although he's definitely got that part of the vote lost.
He probably does. I'm going to move defund the police for the 5th straight week. We're going to get to it eventually. Dave, you got 7 minutes left to say whatever you want to say about vaccines. We covered it on the show.
Yes.
Go for it.
We've had this extraordinary development this week where 9 pharmaceutical companies, including Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, which has just put its trial on hold because of an adverse reaction, 9 pharmaceutical companies came out and made this pledge: we will not release a vaccine until it's properly tested and vetted and safe. That's quite an extraordinary thing for them to feel that they had to do that. Okay. And this reflects this real problem, not just in the US, but in other places around the world. I've seen a lot of because I review a lot of stuff, because I work on this, I've seen a lot of interesting data, some of which hasn't been published yet, but some of which has been, a lot of it has been published out of the US. There was a Gallup poll that showed 35% of Americans just wouldn't take the coronavirus vaccine even if it was made freely available, even if it had been approved by the FDA. They just don't trust it. Judging by previous data I've seen, that is a lot higher than you usually get in terms of people who would refuse a vaccine. Okay, so that's first data point. Second data point, a poll conducted by Harris Polling Company in conjunction with Stat, which is a health news website, a very good one, found that 78% of respondents agreed with the statement the search for the vaccine is being driven more by politics than by science.
Wow.
That doesn't mean they wouldn't take the vaccine, but it's quite extraordinary when you can get 78% of people, and I think that was something like 82% Democrats, 72% Republicans, to agree with that statement. So there is a really serious, this is the pharmaceutical companies can see there is a really serious problem with public trust around a vaccine whenever it appears. Now, it's hard to fault people for having some suspicions, because the way that it's been covered as this really high stakes race between politicians, between pharmaceutical companies, between laboratories, and just the kinds of, it's not just Trump, but Trump is the worst offender in terms of raising the expectations and basically saying the vaccine is the way out of this, right? That, Trump doesn't want to do masks, doesn't want to do lockdowns. No, it's the vaccine. The vaccine is going to come. And Trump has repeatedly said we could get it by the end of October. As far as I can see, there's only one pharmaceutical company which has even really suggested that they could have a vaccine, that they would even know the effectiveness of a vaccine by that point, which is Pfizer keeps saying this. And I don't have a huge amount of trust in I think obviously when a company says this and they say it vaguely enough, kind of, we might have answers by then, it just looks like it's inflating their stock price, right? It's inflating their stock price while not actually committing them to delivering it at that point. Every other pharmaceutical company, Moderna was for a while saying they could have it by the end of October. They're now not saying that. AstraZeneca, as we know, has just put it on. They were always making more modest claims. You are still getting pharmaceutical companies saying we could have it by the end of the year. But in any case, they're still talking about very quick timeframes, which I don't think is helping this public trust. And so, yes, they've now come out and said, well, we won't release a vaccine that hasn't been properly tested. They've got a way to go before they undo some of the suspicions that they have, planted about this. And by the way, even when Pfizer says they might know the effectiveness of that, and they're even saying we might have doses ready for people, that's a long way from the vaccine will be available.
Yes.
By then, which is what Trump keeps seeming to suggest.
Yeah. I should just say, the reason why it takes so long, people should just be aware of this, is because to go through a phase 3 trial, you want about 30,000 people in your trial.
Yep.
And it takes a while to find 30,000 people who are appropriate.
So a couple of companies are now approaching completion of enrollment in those trials.
Exactly.
Yes.
You need to balance race and sex and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
As you say, I don't think any company has the 30,000, but they're getting close.
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Then almost every vaccine, I believe, has booster shots.
Yes.
So, and those booster shots are somewhere between 2 weeks and 4 weeks apart.
Yep.
So before you can even have a proper trial, you need 4 weeks after the full enrollment.
Yes.
Okay, that already takes us to the election.
Yeah.
Then on top of that, you need to wait until at least 100, maybe 200 people get COVID.
Yes.
Because you need enough people in the placebo group
Yes,
to get COVID before you can prove that the people who got the vaccine didn't get COVID.
Yes, yeah.
And we're not allowed to just inject people with COVID, so they need to just stay out in the community, go to a few Trump rallies, to get COVID. So that takes time.
Yeah.
And then you analyze the results. So even if everyone's going jack sprat as fast as you possibly can, you'd be really struggling to get it done, to get results by the middle of November, if not the end of November.
Yeah.
So that's why people are very suspicious.
Yeah, and I think the worst thing you can do, in my view, is do what Trump constantly does, which is talking about cutting bureaucratic red tape and, fast-tracking things and getting emergency authorization. All of these things are alarm bells in people's minds, right? People are not stupid.
Well, on that note, we have the. Well, no. I was about to diss our audience. No. We prove that people aren't stupid because of the many millions of people who download our podcast every single week.
That's right. Yeah, especially in the US Post Office.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
for paying
Peppers.
attention. Mask of God.
Have a good weekend.
Say bye. There we go. That came to you. That's good. See you later.
Yeah.